Now, here's something, an overview of the, I'll give you a few minutes then. An overview of the Kabbalistic and Hermetic, this is from the Corpus Hermeticum, Book 11. For working by himself, that is deity, God, okay? For working by himself, he is always his work, for he is what he creates. If he were separate from it, all would collapse, and all would by necessity perish, because life would no more be no more. Since everything is alive and everything is one, God is also one. If again everything is alive, both in heaven and earth, and there is one life for all which comes into existence through God, God is also that life. All then is made by God, and life is the union of nous, or mind, that direct perceptive mind, and the soul, or consciousness. Death is not the destruction of what has been put together, but the dissolution of their union. Eternity is the image of God. Eternity is eternity has no past, present, and future. Eternity is ever present now. Eternity is a very difficult concept to really wrap your minds around, okay? Because it's always, it's not moving, okay? Eternity, the sun of the cosmos, the man of the sun. Okay, so we go from eternity to the sun, which is our solar system, the world as we would understand it, the cosmos as the ancients would look up. And then we are a reflection of the sun, just like you see on the Tree of Life. You go from Keter down to Tifereth, down to us down here. Well, you have your sod, but then here we are. Boom, boom, boom. Each is a reflection of that which is above it. Okay. People call transformation death because the body is dissolved. But in fact, life withdraws into the unmanifest. That is, the life is no longer attracted to the body, but the polarity is reversed and is now attracted away. Okay. At least temporarily. Okay. The cosmos assumes all forms. It does not hold constant the form that are within it, but changes them within itself. And do not be amazed if there is a bodiless form, for it is like the form of a word. In paintings, mountain peaks appear to stand out sharply, but they are in reality smooth and flat. All is within God. Within God, everything lies in bodiless imagination. Think of him who contains it all. There is nothing to limit the incorporeal. There is nothing quicker or more powerful. It is absolutely without limit, the quickest and most powerful of all. This is the Ein Sof, the emptiness, the void. This is the Buddhist concept of emptiness. It's not that it's void, it's empty of anything. It contains everything, and therefore all potential exists within it. That is God. All potential exists within it, and all that is within that void. We exist within it. The thing is it. You concentrate on this speck of dot right here, and you will understand the nature of creation. And that is true. That is not just some abstract thing I'm saying to you. Because everything is right at this moment and in everything else. Okay? So the void is essential because without it we would be fixed and concrete and transmutation would not be possible. So everything is constantly changing. What we do is with our minds we direct that change to some more or less degree consciously. I like the idea of this image because at the caverns we were at yesterday, there was a point where you could look down at the water, which was maybe 1.5 feet, 3 feet deep, and because of the angle, the rocks reflected across it made it look as if it were a 20-foot drop. Okay? And this is life. That's what's going on all the time. We're looking at reflections of things and thinking that they're solid and corporeal, but they're not. Yes, they're temporarily solid. They're just not permanent. They have not always existed and will not always exist. They're subject to the laws of change, or what we call motion. We direct that change or motion through cause and effect, the law of karma. We do that through occult operations, whether they be magical rituals or alchemical. Do you see how all this ties together?
Yes.
Are you clear on this?
Yes.
Consider this yourself. Command your soul to go anywhere and it will be there quicker than you command. Bid it to go to the ocean and again it is there at once. Not as if it had gone from place to place, but was already there. Order it to fly up to the heavens and it will need no wings, nor will anything impede it, neither the fire or the sun, nor the aether, nor the whirlwind, nor other heavenly bodies, but cutting through them all, it will soar up to the last body. And if you wish to break through all this and to contemplate what is beyond, if there is anything beyond the cosmos, it is within your power. So within your mind, because your mind is a reflection of all of this, you have the capacity to do all these things. Okay. Spirituality is the understanding of your mind. See what power you have and what speed. You can do all these things and yet God cannot. Reflect on God in this way, and as having all within himself as ideas, the cosmos himself the whole. If you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot understand him. Like is understood by like. Grow to immeasurable size, be free from every body, transcend all time, become eternity, and thus you will understand God. Suppose nothing to be impossible for yourself. Consider yourself immortal and able to understand everything, all arts, sciences, and the nature of every living creature. Become higher than that of all heights, lower than all depths, sense as one within yourself the entire creation, fire, water, the dry, the moist. Conceive yourself to be in all places at the same time, in the earth, the sea, and the heaven, and you are not yet born, that you are within the womb, that you are young, old, dead, and that you are beyond death. Conceive all things at once, time, places, actions, qualities, and quantities, and then you can understand God. But if you lock up your soul in your body, abase it and say, I understand nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of the sea, I cannot reach the heaven, I do not know who I was or who I shall be, then what have you to do with God? For you cannot conceive anything beautiful or good while you are attached to the body and are evil. For the greatest evil is to ignore what belongs to God. To be able to know and to will and to hope is the straight and easy way appropriate to each that will lead to the supreme good. When you take this road, this good will meet you everywhere, and you will experience it everywhere, even where and when you do not expect it. When awake, asleep, on ship, on the road, by day or night, and when speaking and when silent. For there is nothing which it is not. Now, do you say that God is invisible? Be careful, for who is more manifest than he? He has made all things for this reason, that through them you should see him. This is the goodness, to agathon, of good, of God. This his excellence, what he made manifest through all, though you cannot see what is bodiless. Nous, direct perception, is seen in the act of contemplation. God is in the act of creation. Nous is seen in the act of contemplation. God in the act of creation. I'd write that down. These things have been made clear to you, Hermes, thus far. Reflect on all other things in the same way within yourself, and you will not be led astray. You may find other definitions for some of these terms, by the way. They don't have single definitions. Okay, so it's like there's 10 different interpretations of some of these, Sanskrit words.
I keep writing down in my little column, look up.
Look up, yeah. I see, yeah. Question mark, look up, yeah. The greatest disease of the soul is denial of God. Next is belief in appearances. And accompanying these are all evils and nothing good. The denial of, when we say God, it's not necessarily, again, a deistic or theistic approach, but the denial of anything beyond the physical world.
Belief in appearances.
Belief in appearances. Because if you believe, it's natural cause effect. If there's nothing more than this world, then what is in front of me is the most important thing there is.
No, I can't imagine anything else.
Right.
I believe this to be the only.
Right. And that's why, when you look at the 20th century, why communism, was the greatest evil that befell the world. It killed more people than possible. Yet everyone likes to ignore it. I think 80 million people. Is the low number. That does include the hundreds of millions that were with giant prison camp. I see, I see so many people talking about, the Soviet Union as if it was the moral equivalent. In the 80s, the late 70s and the 80s, the idea was to kind of create a moral equivalency between the United States and the Soviet Union. You saw a lot of that in the media. And I saw that from a lot of my political science professors, nice Berkeley graduates. And I said, that's a prison camp.
Yeah.
Those guns point inward. Do you understand that? There's problems with the empire. I understand that. But I'd rather live in this empire than that one. So do most people. That's why they try to get here legally or illegally. It's a mass murder. And you see that too in contemporary spirituality, and I'll talk about that later, when I see how many Western Buddhists are just, you know, I'll go down the laundry list, but, you know, they just refuse to accept the vileness of communism. And I say, you know, as Mao said to the young Dalai Lama, religion is poison. Okay. I say because the fundamental nature of communism, which one French writer referred to as the last religion of the Kali Yuga. You know, the Kali Yuga, the Age of Iron. Okay. He referred as communism because it's the ultimate dropping down. I mean, you know, where he had strong criticisms of the revealed religions of Judaism and Christianity and Islam. And, you know, but said really the last new one was communism because it denied anything. It denied anything beyond just materiality, materialism. And that we could scientifically improve everyone and everything through our own actions. And at that point, since there's nothing to account to or for except the system and the machine, everything is possible and everything is justified. That's the problem with, you know, that when you get into those totalitarian systems that have no, I mean, you see the problems with totalitarian systems that are religious based, but at least they have an internal mechanism that can destroy them.
Right.
Okay? But when you get into the materialistic ones, the only thing that destroys it is its own inertia, which is what happened to the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed because of its own inertia. And we fortunately had the good fortune to have a president over here and a president over there who were able to manage its deconstruction rather than what could have been a just catastrophe.
Yeah.
And Americans who've been, you know, force-fed a lot of pablum about current events don't understand what potential was going on there. You know? So that, you know, that's the thing. That's the problem of, you know, when you deny spirituality, whether it be metaphysical atheism, meaning non-deist, but there's you're gonna have to account. You know, there's cause and effect, equilibrium. Okay. Or whether it be deism, whether it be final judgment, any of that stuff. When you remove all that from the picture, all bets are off. That's why we've seen in many ways, I mean, let's face it, is the world that much better because we don't have prayer in public schools? Now, you may not like them there, but is it really that much better?
No.
I mean, is it worth saying we have to take the 10 Commandments off the courthouse? I mean, I want to put this in practical terms for you.
True.
Okay? They say, don't steal, don't kill, don't murder, you know, don't take other people's things, don't commit adultery. I wish the judges in my courthouse paid more attention to it. And I don't say that jokingly. If you knew the horror of corruption that took place when 3 sitting judges are removed in the county courthouse. Okay? I mean, that goes deep. That's the top. That goes through our entire legal system. And that goes back to trust. If I can't trust the legal system on that level, on that pyramid, if I can't trust whatever, things get shaky. Well, right. Why do you do that? Because you don't believe you're going to have to account for what you do. Anything like they see, any evil becomes possible because I can get away with it. There's no sense of accountability. So I try to keep this as practical for you, and in some ways that means poking you in the belly a bit about some of your cherished beliefs. I don't mean to do that too hard, but you know, you got to step back. That's the reflection part. Where have I maybe been looking at things? Yeah, I get part of it, but it's like a funhouse mirror reflection. You know, I want to see the real reflection. I don't want to see the funhouse mirror one. Okay? So you really have to deconstruct every one of your beliefs. And I mean that, every one of them. You have to walk away from everything you believe.
And then say, what do I believe?
What do I, and why? Why? Why do I do this? Because you know what? You may do it just because, again, it fits the bumper sticker. You don't really do any good, and you don't really feel good. But you got the bumper sticker. You got the card for the right membership. Okay?
So it's taking those 5 questions that you gave us and doing that to everything you believe in.
Pretty much, everything, yeah. You have to do that to everything. You know, you really need to be, as one, I love to used to say, be a walking question mark. Now, you don't want to, you know, with yourself. With yourself. Because this goes back to something else which is interesting. They're going to get us when they're ready, right?
Yeah.
Is that direct perception, as I said, is the soul of God. You see, that's not my limited idea of myself, but that's my ability to see directly things as they are. Okay? Rules over all. My ability to see things as they are rules over all destiny, law, and all other things. And nothing is impossible for it. Neither to raise a human soul above destiny, nor if the soul has been negligent as happens, to subject it to destiny. When I am able to perceive things as they are, not as I would like them to be, not as I've been told they are, but as they are, then everything becomes possible to me, because I'm working with the palette in front of me. Okay? It's like, how many of you do any reconstruction work? How many have done like renovations on your house?
Oh, yeah.
That's like a do-it-yourself divorce kit, isn't it?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
When you become an alcoholic, that's the time.
That's it.
What are you gonna do?
You know, in a couple of the older houses around my place is when people, the joke is when they're opening up the walls, how many bottles they find in there.
Yeah, it is.
Because you have this idea in your mind of how things are. And then you tear open the wall, and there's what things really are. And it's, mouse droppings,
Raccoons.
Black mold.
Yeah, black mold.
Let's go with that.
Oh. Now, this is interesting because with regards to the afternoon, according to the traditions of the classical worldview, everyone dies, but not everyone is immortal. That your rebirth is not guaranteed, nor is your salvation guaranteed. That everything is up to you. Okay? You have, you may live in alternate realms or dimensions. We call these, you know, the different spheres, different heavens. Okay? You may come back. I mean, the Egyptians, particularly the temple of the temple of Set, spent a great deal of time on physical immortality, as well as on the body of light. We know very little about it, but we do know a little bit. And you know, because if you were Pharaoh, you were God incarnate, right? You had your own deity that you worshipped, and you were a deity that was worshipped.
Right.
Why would you want to reincarnate?
Right. Why go down?
Yeah. And for a lot of the folks, you know, who, same thing if you were a mid-level bureaucrat. You had a good place compared to the rest, right? Why would you want to risk coming back? So almost all their practices were designed to maintain immortality in another world. Okay? So everything they did was to, and what did that mean? That meant primarily maintaining their individualized consciousness. Maintaining the consciousness of who they were at that time.
And taking it with them.
And taking it with them.
And which is what we're trying to do.
To some degree. Theirs was much more concrete. Somewhat similar to, I'd say even more concrete than a lot of the Taoist practices. Okay? Whereas, you know, if you're not that concerned about your position in life, your occupation, it's actually easier to do it. But if you're trying to maintain all this stuff and it's distraction, terry stuff. It's better just to not be too concerned about that and just focus on the mind, because as we'll see later on, why that matters. Okay.
Wasn't that the difference between what is permanent and what is
Right,
permanent?
right. But the Egyptians wanted, remember, they were coming from a society that was moving downward, and they knew it.
Oh, that's right.
Even though we see it as moving upward, they see it as, they remember, they have a period of history that goes back 40,000 years that we can only validate maybe, I think, 3,500 or 4,000 of them. So we say, well, the rest clearly is, we say myth in the word that it's made up, it's wishful thinking. But they're quite detailed about it. Okay.
Is that why the teachings became more and more hidden?
The teachings become hidden according to various vast cycles. We'll talk a little bit about that later. the capacity of individuals to learn. Not everyone has the same capacity.
Exactly.
So alternate realms and true immortality involve the formation of the glorious body that you hear in the Gnostic and Christian teachings, or the body of light.
Could you say that again?
Well, immortality involves the formation of the glorious body, or the body of light. You see that in the Gnostic teachings. And there's also, this is where we see different folks ascending in the chariot, seeing the views of heaven, ascending bodily. The bodily ascension to heaven. Okay. Who does that? Jesus is said to do it. Mary is said to do it. Okay.
Enoch.
Enoch is said to do this.
Elijah.
Yeah. This is a transmutation. Remember, and we'll go into, because their thought, word, and deed
We're in
are
love.
not separate. They're congruent. They're not incongruent.
So Congress, they get to take their body with them.
Because there is no body. There's just thought, word, and deed. They're all expressions of one and the same. Consciousness manifests through the form of thought, word, and deed.
Okay.
You have to understand that. It's mind manifesting through thought, word, and deed.
Is this
Because
like,
it says, remember, it says, you make the confession of having sinned. I have sinned in thought, word, and deed. I've made an error. I've missed the point. And that comes from the Christianity through Judaism, which gets it from the Babylonian captivity. The exact ordering of the words. I don't understand. I've made a mistake. I've erred. And sin meant two things. We think of sin, there's most basically the term to miss the mark in archery, but there also is a meaning of the word sin, which means what we think of in terms of religious sin, a profound, taboo. Okay, but whatever it is, it's saying that, look, I've done this first in my thoughts. I've misunderstood things, or I've made this conscious decision to do this. I've done it in my speech, and I've done it in my actions. Okay? But only when the three are harmonious do we have that. Things are okay. When our thought, word, and deed are congruent, then everything works. Okay?
and is that also the crystal body? The light body?
I've never heard the light. I've never heard it referred to in that terms. I've heard it referred to in Vajrayana as the diamond body.
Diamond body.
Okay, but not crystal.
And diamond body is the same idea.
Yes, it's indestructible.
Okay.
It's indestructible because it's thought, and thought is not destructible.
Okay.
That has to be very clear.
Exactly.
Yes.
Could you just talk a little bit more about, or explain a little bit in another way or in more detail, how thoughts, words, and deeds are the body? Or you're saying that you take your body with you because there is no body, because your thoughts, words, and deeds are one. Can you just explain that?
Sure. Your words are the medium that express your thoughts, and at the same time, they're a vehicle of the body. That is, you use your vocal cords to say things, and it has a certain effect on the body. Emotions arise from them. Emotions arise before them. There's a tangible impact that they have. You say good words to someone and they feel good. You say harsh words, they may, feel badly. So words are very powerful expressions of our thought, hence the importance of mantras and chanting and vocalizations and divine names. See, in Kabbalah, the spheres are not independent entities. The divine names and the spheres are the one and the same. Okay? The light gives rise, the divine names, when said, give rise to the sphere. We think of them as very compartmentalized. And that's something that when the divine name is said, it gives rise to it. The thing just is always there. It reveals it, or whatever you want to call it. It's not like they exist separately. It's the same with us. And then our body responds to our thoughts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So if our words affect our body and are an expression of our thought, and our body responds to our thoughts, then when we bring them closer and closer to harmony, then things are just better for us and around us. But again, if you think, oh, well, I can't do this, I can't do that, or this sucks, or, wait a minute, that doesn't matter, that doesn't affect me, I'm over here, that's not me. Or you say one thing and do another and mean a third. That's a lie. That's a lie to yourself, that's a lie to the other.
Lie detectors.
Right. But when we're honest with ourselves and we have that congruity, as I like to say in NLP. You know, when you have that, then things move more easily for you, more smoothly.
And
So-
how that makes it immortal?
Well, then there's particular practices, because the mind is the only thing which is immortal. So the mind utilizes the expressions of the words and uses expressions of bodily actions. And those in turn will have an effect on the body, particularly on the nervous system, which creates it more, makes it more sensitive. See, the nervous system is designed to keep energy in check. What our activities do is they reverse that so that it allows more energy to flow. Yeah. Because if the whole body, if the whole energy of the nervous system were available to you at once, you'd probably cook, you'd explode. So what we do is slowly acclimate you so you can use more and more of your inherent bodily energy.
Hence the practice of yoga and qigong and all of
That's why yoga and
the
qigong,
channels
yeah.
so you can access more. It's not that you're accumulating more, it's just the words that we have to utilize that.
We're getting rid of the obscurations.
That's right.
Getting rid of
So
the
your
blocks.
channels are open, and so you're able to access more at once.
So,
Now, the mind isn't necessarily the intellect.
No, no, it's not. That's an aspect of it, but that's not the mind.
But it's not the totality of it.
so when your thoughts, words, and deeds are congruent, they're one thing.
Right.
So when the mind is eternal or immortal, then the body becomes immortal. or
Right,
eternal.
if you're congruent on it, and you're thinking about, like it says in the earlier, think of yourself as higher than this, lower than this, all things at once. If you want it, it's possible, it's within you. You have to develop it. But what does that also mean? That means getting rid of all the things that you are not. As we said earlier at the break, classically the notion is that everyone dies, but not everyone gets reborn. The question then is, well, what happens to those people who don't achieve some form of immortality, or those who don't go back into reincarnation or reincarnate? And the answer is very simple. The notion is that they, get absorbed back into some kind of massive cosmic mass. Okay. There's also other ideas about it too, but the question people often ask is, well, what is this notion of rebirth, and why is it so difficult? And the reason we meditate is to learn to control and understand our mind. As we said, spirituality is understanding our own mind. And the Corpus Hermeticum, this book, is a very small book, which I tell students to write out by hand so that they can absorb it within themselves. I've done the same with the Sefer Yetzirah. You write it out by hand, and you acquire an understanding of the text in the same manner our predecessors did. That you don't get simply by reading it, or simply by copying it, or printing it off a PDF file. Okay, you can do that for study text, but at some point you have to write things down. You have to write them out. And what we see is not necessarily stated in there, but in the general fashion. The question is, a lot of things, what happens when we die? And as I've stated, the process between meditation, sleep, and death is the same. The same thing is stated quite clearly in Tibetan teachings on death, which are, from what I understand, some kind of Mongolian import, but also Chinese notions. I mean, Brian can better comment on that. But the point is, when we are in our body, we have something to relate to. So when you have a dream and something happens in your mind that terrifies you and you take it for real, what do? You wake up. Now what happens when you don't have a way to wake up now? Because in your dead, there's no body to escape back into. You are within the domain of your mind. So unless you can begin to recognize what is real, or what is a projection of your own mind from what isn't while you're alive, how are you going to do it when you're dead? So what happens then is the emotional currents that overwhelm you at the time of death, at the time of transition, whatever you want to call it, these become your dominant force, and they're what draw you into a new body, because you want the comforts of the prison house to keep out these thoughts and ideas from arising within your psyche, these external forces that you feel you need to escape from. So that's why we need to master our mind. Now, what happens is you say, well, how can I do this? Well, the answer is there are different practices for different levels of individuals. But one of the easiest ones is to simply have, again, this is why it goes back to having a firm commitment to the teachings and the teacher and the lineage that you, or traditions, is to focus your consciousness eternally on some kind of divine image. Now, in the Egyptian temples, they painted wonderful images for what? For the soul to follow. These were directions for the dead. They weren't for the living. These were directions for the dead. Go here. Go left to the left of the white cypress tree. Go to the spring. Don't drink it. Directions on where to go. Well, you're not going to have directions on where to go because most likely no one's going to be sitting over you reading from the Book of the Dead like we would in a traditional society. And if you're lucky, you might have someone saying prayers for you. Okay? But they need to know which ones. So you're kind of on your own. That's why it's important that you come together as a group, as a community of supporters in one another, so that you can help one another not just through life, but at the time of your passing as well. That's the most important time. That's a summation of everything that you've done, right then and there. You be graduating. Okay? So, I want to put this in its proper context for you. Okay? Now, as those images arise, of course, if you focus on, your spirit, a saint or a holy being, someone who you really feel a devotion to, that's helpful. If you have someone in life who you really felt this way towards, that's all the much better. Okay? But either way, you need to keep your mind on that so that all the things that arise up around you can be, done away with or can be ignored. Now, there's other things too, but this is the easiest and most fundamental. Now, as I say, my grandmother insisted on two things. One is that she would die quietly in her sleep, and the other is that she'd be reborn as a concert pianist. So, I don't know if she did the second, but I know she did the first. And I know when she did the first, I can still see her, because I looked at her as I was leaving. I was going away for a conference that weekend, and I said goodbye. I went over to see her, and I said goodbye. And I knew this was the last time I'd see her alive. And I come back Sunday, and she's gone. That's just the way it goes. Okay, but of course, it's kind of different because when I was growing up, my great uncle would tell his stories. Oh well, he knew his brother-in-law was dead because he saw him standing on the steps with no shoes. I guess they actually didn't bury them with shoes then. I don't know if they still do, but the brown suit that he was buried in,
They don't bury them with
shoes, yeah. So this was, this is one of those things. Of course, he had a lot of experiences, and as did his mothers and others. They had profound, psychic experiences. But this was taken as everyday occurrence, do you understand? These were just understood and accepted. And if you go to different cultures and other places, as they would say, we make a great deal out of psychic phenomenon because we think of it as so unnatural, irregular. It's almost something we want to talk about to be special. Whereas in places where these kind of practices were well known, it was just taken as common everyday experience. What are you talking about that for? That's like water. That's like saying it rained out. It doesn't mean anything. Give them something that matters. So like all these stories that you have on cable TV about ghost hunting, they wouldn't gather that. What do you care? You should go in there and help them on their way instead of doing this. What do you watch that? Get a little lecture on proper relationships to dead beings. Etiquette, yeah. Now, in the text, you see, particularly in the Corpus Hermeticum, that the souls, or the consciousness, the bodies of consciousnesses, are composed of sheaths of air, and that the air is also one of the four elements. Now, I'm not going to be going over too much detail of this. I was told at break that almost all of you have read my books, and I can see from signing them that you have. Therefore, I will not go over in detail things which you have ready access to in the books. And of course, many of you, I understand, have done a great deal of practice with the material in those books, which is very, very nice to hear. I'm very pleased. Please feel free to send me emails or anything if you want to about some of your experiences. Okay, that's okay to do. I may not be able to respond to them, but it's okay to hear. And what I'll do is maybe I'll say something to Brian about what I get, and any suggestions that come to mind. But as you know, the elements are 4 different expressions of energy that we're used to. There's a 5th, we call it aether. The moderns have adopted the word acacia, but acacia doesn't mean spirit, it means space, as in spaciousness, but also stellar space, it means openness, vacuousness. Okay. So this aether, which is this all-encompassing energy, this primal materia of which all things can arise from, manifests in 4 principal forms: fire, air, water, and earth. These can often be said in different orders. Sometimes it's air, fire, water, earth, depending on what you read. This has to do with relationships. We'll talk about that tomorrow somewhat in alchemy. But the air is what is important, because the air is what? What does it do in classical Egyptian symbolism? It unites heaven and earth, right? Okay. What does air do? Right. Which means inspiration, divine. Fine, sorry. What else is it? Air is life. Right. Yeah. Yeah, you can go the general, they call the rule of 3. You can go 30 days without food. You can go 3 days without water, and you can go 3 minutes without air. Now it's not hard and fast, but the rule of 3 is kind of a good one to think of.
What about fire?
So, we'll get to that. That's a good one, because air, what it does is, what do we do when we breathe and we hold it? What do we do? We get warm. So a lot of these practices that you see in the Orient, and some of the Kabbalistic ones from the Middle East that got, they kind of moved over, they adopted breathing exercises. I find them very difficult, by the way. I don't find the classical Kabbalistic breathing exercises very useful. They're very hard to do, and they're almost put in a state of kind of hyperventilation. They're very stressful. I find them to be very stressful on the body. But any kind of breathing practice that does whether it's a long, slow inhalation and exhalation and holding, doing rhythmic breathing, or some kind of breathing, it builds up energy in the body, okay? But what we say is what it also does is it purifies the body. That heat burns off the dross. What is that dross? The dross on a physical level, we would say, is the obscurations of the nervous system. On an emotional level, it's whatever emotions arise from it, which is important. Whatever thoughts arise, remember I told you earlier, pay attention to your thoughts that come up, okay? That's what you need to really work with. That's the obstacle in your way to the thing you want to do. Well, I want to feel peaceful and happy, but then you get, but deal with what's there in front of you, because that's the thing you have to address, okay? The same thing when you're doing this breathing, it has a lot of tensions to be released in the body, and those tensions are knots of energy, and we need to release that, okay? And when you release that, you have it available for what? For other things, okay? Some people get so used to walking around with that tension, they don't even notice it. And you can see them, I mean, they're like, their shoulders are up here, so they have no neck, and all sorts of stuff is going on. Anyhow, air is that thing. Air is the breath of life. Air is life, okay? And according to the Old Testament and Count Dracula, the life is in the blood. You see it in the blood. Okay. That's why the blood has particularly important meaning in an evolutionary sense in alchemy and Kabbalah, as well as other Oriental schools, but it's often not talked about because it's not something that they like to deal with openly. Considered very, very secret, lest it be abused. So, air is considered also unites in the macrocosm and the microcosm. It unites me with the broader universe out there, okay? And as long as I'm breathing, I'm in here. So, air is a substance from which the body of the soul is manufactured, both visible and tangible, okay? This is the psychic body, the astral body, the thin layers of the various levels of being which we possess in both density and power. So the body of air, these air bodies, you hear them referred to like the spirits of air, okay? It's because they're ethereal, they can move about in space, they don't have limitations by matter. But like air, like a not a hurricane, but a tornado, it has a definite location, right? A tornado's spinning, right? And it has a definite center, and it has a definite what? What else? It has a definite sense of individuality and I, but at the same time, it's part of the broader landscape.
It's connected.
It's connected. So when we think of air in that way, that's what air does for us too. And that's why when you deal with the spirits of air, which are often called the demons, are said to be spirits of air. Demons are chaotic forces. Okay? They don't have a high degree of organization. Not unlike, a good half-mile wide hurricane, or just a tornado tearing up your town. It has some center point, but there's a lot of stuff moving around there. It's not a nice, still, calm breeze. Okay? But a breeze, you can feel that too, right? You feel when it hits you and then goes down, right? You feel it. Oh, well, that was it. That was the breeze. Another one. Okay. So air is life. Air is organizational power. Air is what unites the universal and the individual, the inner and the outer, the material and the immaterial. Air is the finest of matter. And when we look at air and water, that's what we will see tomorrow. And alchemy creates what we call alchemical mercury. And what is feng shui? What do the words mean?
Wind, water.
Wind, water. Okay, wind, water. The energies of life. Because you want to say, is the wind good here? Right? You don't want stagnant wind. How with the water? Is the water moving? Because what do you get if you get a puddle?
Mosquitoes.
Mosquitoes. What do you get if you get mosquitoes?
Diseases.
Yeah, you get diseases and death. So you want to make sure the air is good, it's nice and moving, in the right pace, not too strong, not too weak, right? You want to make sure the water's moving just right. Yeah, it'll have its ups and downs, but most time you want it to be nice and manageable, right? Just like those little electronic springs you have in your offices, right? The winds also are the forces of what? The winds of fortune. The winds of change. That's why in the East they refer to karmic winds or habituated psychic patterns. You say, well, how can we imprint the wind? Well, we imprint the wind with our sound, with our word, our vocalization. In the East they imprinted with prayer flags, but I've also, in the West they used to do that too. In the 6th century it was very common for people to write in Latin or in whatever their native language was if they could write. Or because they copied it usually from a book. I mean, they weren't literate, so they copied this from a text. Prayers on strips of linen, and they tie it to the, trees. And this is, in Europe. So this was, they didn't have a name. It's like they called them prayer flags that we know of. We just know they did it. So there's a lot of things that we did. They were done. They didn't have a name. It was something you just did. Okay. And then later on, we forget them, and we have to give them a label. Otherwise, it's not authentic enough. It doesn't have the right label. So you just call them prayer banners or prayer strips or prayer cloths. Prayer cloth, what it is, It was very nice. And the idea is that as they blow, the prayers blow on the wind, and that carries, and that's a blessing. It's the same thing as the notion of how many work with charging water, energized water, right? Mm-hmm. And they talk about too, is the guy, you put little stones in it with stuff written on it, or in classical German magic, you can read about up into the 18th, 19th century, they did experiments with it. They would take a phrase or prayer from the Bible, and they'd write it in ink, and they'd put it in the water, and then the ink would come off the water, because it wasn't writing with Sharpie, right? This is ink, right? And then they would drink the water. Now, some say use pencil. I know, my great-grandfather, they would just do it with pencil and put it in. Sometimes they'd make them eat it too, But the point is, where do you see this? You see this in the Gospel of John, where it talks about they've eaten the scroll.
Yes.
Okay? You're literally consuming the word. That's the notion, you're consuming the word. So these things, and strangely, are both metaphorical and literal. Which is what ritual is all about. It's making the metaphor literal, but at the same time taking the literal and making it metaphorical.
Yep.
Okay? You understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Very good. So these forces, the forces of wind, are very difficult at times to manage. So many systems avoid it. I think that however, with your situation where you have Bryant right here to work with you, that is not an issue. Okay. But working directly on the winds, as we call it, is problematic. That's why many people work with alchemy, which is a fire path, a mineral fire path, or working with Kabbalah, which is considered a symbolical water path. But working directly on the inner energies of the body without knowledge of what you're doing is problematic. Okay? Usually you can get away with some basic stuff without a problem, honestly. It's basic fundamental breathing, basic relaxation. All the basic stuff is really very, very good and take you right to the end. Where people screw up is when they become unhappy with that and they think they got to do something more complex and they break what isn't broken, you know. So there's a lot of very fundamental I should say simple fundamental practices that are often tremendously underrated. Okay, and so I think in terms of working with the energies of the body, you know, Brian can help you with that. We'll talk a little bit about the middle pillar, hopefully at some point in regards to that too. Now, because of this, we have to look at what we're doing here, okay? And how this relates, how these spiritual practices again relate to the different levels of practice in the world. On the outer level, we're dealing with other people and community, right? You go to church because you don't know what you're doing, and you just need to do this so that someone can tell you some basic stuff. Because you're a child, or you're an adult, but you're really not that interested. This isn't your thing. But you're going through the motions, and you're getting some good grounding, and basically you're being a decent human being. Okay? The idea is to keep you there. The next level is you take it more seriously and you develop a real prayer practice. All of you probably had grandmothers like this. You know, we joke about them where I'm at because, oh geez, everyone's got a grandmother out there who can do a novena for you and get you out of jail, you know. It's like, you know, I mean, they're just fabulous at it, you know. They're just great. I had friends in different esoteric groups they always just swap stories about their grandmothers. You know, they all had someone who could do something. The guy who makes the pizzas, his dad, let's see, he runs one of the pizza places that I go to. So an Italian, it's not really you don't buy it hot there. You take it home and they have all sorts of pasta and stuff. And I said to him, oh yeah, I said, you know, in the old place, which was across the street, I'd look in the back and there'd be this picture of Padre Pio in the back on the post, and all these Italian ladies would be sitting back there making pasta. And he goes, oh yeah, it's still like that. And just, you know, they're still over there. They just bought a different building to work out in. And he's saying, yeah, it's great. He goes, you know, my grandma, she's like 95. She must be doing something right now. Because, you know, you still have people coming over asking for the blessed oil, you know. He comes over, and they come and they swear that she's, you know, done this or that for them. And it's true because of the faith. They have a sheer devotion, and it's going to work. As we said earlier, sheer devotion. What we do is we tend to complicate the matter, okay? So if you have a profound devotion, particularly to affinity to a saint or some kind of holy figure or deity, this will go a long, long way in helping you in all of your work, okay? From there, you go on to the next level, which is understanding that experience and working, as we said, initiatically. But at some point, initiation is no longer something you experience in the outer sense, or even in the inner, well, even in the inner sense. But you now must take responsibility for yourself as a human being. And this is what we would say is the ultimate level of practice. You are confident in who you are. You understand your relationship to others. You may not be perfect. You may not have achieved this great, perfect, you know, type of like 10th level epistemic illumination on the tree of life. But you are on your way. You are moving quickly on your journey. And you know that ultimately everything relies within you, your own mind. And it is within your own mind that you will have to deal with everything at your time of death. So get used to doing that now while you meditate and while you sleep. Understand? Good. Okay. I have some quotes in here from Jocelyn Godwin, the Ageless Wisdom regarding immortality and the Chaldean oracles from the Giuliani, the author of the oracles in ancient Rome. We'll kind of skip that. But here's something from Blavatsky, although I encourage you to read Godwin's book if you haven't. Jocelyn Godwin. He politely mentions me in the back. The Golden Thread. Okay. The Golden, and Godwin quotes Helena Petrova Blavatsky. Everyone know who Blavatsky was? Mm-hmm. Okay, good. But under Ithaca, that's where she wrote Isis Unveiled. Mm-hmm. The permanent preservation of a personal identity beyond death is a very rare achievement accomplished only by those who are restless seekers of nature and control their own supermaterial development. It is accomplished only by adepts and sorcerers, the one class having acquired the supreme secret knowledge by holy methods with benevolent motives, the other having acquired it by unholy methods and for baser motives. So essentially, if you keep your motives, pure in the sense that it's not selfish, and let's say selfish is relative. I mean, you always benefit from what you do, right? And you cannot not benefit from it. But if benefiting yourself first is the intention, that's what we would consider base. With having reckless disregard for others is what we would consider evil. Okay? So if you undertake your practice with the intention of benefiting others and yourself, then knowing that's good, that's the motive you want to have. That's the motive. I'm going to help others. I know I will be benefited in the process. I'm okay with that. I'm going to do this, and that's, you settle in that state, that kind of happiness. And I like this one. The ignorant are deprived of immortality. The ignorant. I mean, you can't be ignorant and be immortal. You have to take the path of wisdom. Now, because the Father of all is constituted out of light and life, the truth is, light and life is God. And if you realize yourself as being from light and life, and that you have been made out of them, you return to life. Now, all the visualizations that you're taught to do in my books or any others, what do they involve? Visualizing light. Now, what happens when you have light? You have, someone tell me, what do you have? Illumination, right? What else? Very good. That's part of the, what else?
Sight.
No shadows.
No shadows. You have sight, and what else? You have
Energy.
heat. Energy, heat. Right. And when we have light and heat, what do we have? Life. At least as far as we know it. Because you can have a cold light. When nothing's living there. Okay, a cold illumination. When you have light and heat, you have life. And that's why so much of what we work on in alchemy and Kabbalah deals with dealing with the energies of fire, using air as a means of moving them into us through breathing, through visualization, or through alchemical work. Okay? God has endowed man beyond all mortal creatures with these two gifts, nous and speech, both as much valued as immortality. Man has the spoken word. If he uses these gifts rightly, he will be no different from the immortals, and on departing from the body, he will be guided by both to the realm of the gods and the blessed ones. Okay. Knowledge of direct perception, the power of speech, or proper prayer and invocation, and through these you will be guided to the blessed realms, because upon death, as you say in your prayers, what did we say? Think of a place and what? You were there. Think of a thing and you were there. See? Get it?
No, I don't.
Think of a thing and you were there. It says in the corpus realm. Think of a place and you were there. So as you're saying your prayers, your mind is being directed to that place. So if as you're leaving the body, you will go towards that place. And upon death, that's what keeps you focused on that place. That state. We say place, but it's a state. Okay. Of course, and of course you go to the realm of the gods and the heroes. Death and rebirth, of course, is a common initiatic praxis. And those of you who have the opportunity, initiation is critical to our psychic maturation or the experience of our natural self. So what initiation tries to do is put us in a state where we're receptive to our own self. At least that's what it should. I'm sure there are a few out there that are different. But it's designed to just make us aware of what we already possess. Okay. Meditation is critical because it takes the seeds of initiation and matures them. That's why initiations are symbolic, so that you get the essence and you chew on it, that seed, and you mature it, you water it, you focus on it, develop it. Okay. Direct experience or illumination as a result of meditation is critical to becoming the psychic self, that is to experience our mind free from self-imposed limitations in its natural state. See, when you have an insight, nothing else is there, right? It's direct. It's like if you have some knowledge of a foreign language, when you're speaking in that language, you're not looking the words up in a dictionary. It's the direct communication. okay? Because it's part of you, okay? Now this leads us to the importance of the day school and the night school. And again, the night school is what we refer to as the lucid dreaming practices. Day school is meditation. During the 16th century, there was what was referred to as the School of the Night. This was met at the helm of John Dee in Mortlake. The School of the Night was a gathering of powerful and intelligent individuals within the court of Queen Elizabeth. We're not exactly sure what they did, but just there is a connection there. And of course, John Dee was what? Astrologer, magician, probably the most brilliant man in Europe at the time. And he stopped. 007. It's true. Well, when Ian Fleming, used that 007, I mean, he knew that that was the signature of John Dee on his letters to the Queen. And Ian Fleming was involved in the black operations against the Nazis during the Second World War, which involved the creation of phony Nostradamus prophecies and horoscopes. And Sybil Leek, who wrote Diary of a Witch and was quite famous in the late 60s, early 70s, she was involved with him. She knew him. And in fact, during the late 70s, she was involved in those practices. I should say, not involved with him, but in that work through intelligence. And she used to come down my way in the mid-70s to visit our local, Harry Potter, Doogie Howser, local boy. That's good, Dr. Frederick Santee. Someone can go to YouTube and look that up on Animal Planet, an interview about it. She's come down there. So, this practice of the day is meditation. And the practice of the day is reminding yourself about the changing nature of the world that you live in, so that your mind does not take it as fixed and permanent, but as malleable. The practice of the day is the various meditations, visualizations, or any work that you do that has to do with helping to reunite you, okay, in that work. The practice of the night is dream work, and that's lucid dreaming. And the way we want to do lucid dreaming, the reason is because, how many of you experienced a lucid dream? I figured almost all of you. Good, so you know exactly what I mean. That state of knowing that you're dreaming, okay, what you want to do is you want to induce it regularly. Because that means there's a transition between the inner and the outer, between the objective and the subjective, okay? Then what you want to do is you want to work that and push that even further. Not just to the point where you say, I know that I'm dreaming, but where you can begin to control the dream. And you can change and manipulate the effects within it. Because remember, the dream exists where? In your own mind. Right. So this means you can begin, to control the effects within your own mind. Now, when you do that, you then can also move on to, of course, all sorts of wonderful things. We see this talked about in different scriptures where you can go visit people, you can have experiences with the living, with the dead, you can create more than one body for yourself. We see in the New Testament at the end Jesus is seen as appearing in many places simultaneously. We see that in Oriental teachings as well, where the Bodhisattva's ability to multiply various bodies is unlimited. Okay? We see this in certain teachings too, where some saints are seen to be at the bedsides of the dying when they're thousands of miles away. Padre Pio, for an example, there are many stories about him where he would be seen. Some people would say, well, they saw him at the same time or the same day, but he was sitting on his garden. Okay? So, that being said, we have substantial references to these possibilities. What we have to do is actualize them through our practice. The best thing to work with for dream yoga is when you're laying in bed. You've read it in the book, and I want to go over it again with you. When you're laying in bed, is to focus your attention on your throat. Now, when I originally was taught this, it was at the back of the neck, okay, more towards the medulla oblongata. I found that that worked because that affects the nervous system, particularly visual and auditory receptors. But it was a little tricky, and then later I, got different instruction. They said, well, that's fine, but move it to the throat. Now in Kabbalah, what do they say is at the throat? But da, knowledge. Knowledge, okay. So I said, well, I'm going to work with that. Now the color that you get in typical Kabbalah is not very good. You want to use the color red because it's an energizing color. And it's vital. Now here's something very important. And this I cannot stress enough. But when you sit for meditation, when you sit for any of this work, you have to think of your body as no longer being a physical thing, but as being an energetic, hollow, vibrant thing. Okay? This is so critical. You have to realign your orientation towards your body so that you imagine it as light. It can be crystal clear, but it has to be brilliant, and it has to be insubstantial, meaning that it's not like something you could put your finger on. You can maybe put your finger through it. It occupies space. It has a sense of presence, but it has no density or mass. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. You really have to work on that particularly every time you sit. Every time you sit, you got to start with that in some fashion. And allow, because of that hollowness, that spaciousness that you create within yourself, you understand? That spaciousness, that hollowness, that's what allows you to be receptive to things. And I'm going to give you some teachings on the middle pillar that I didn't write down in the book. At least I don't believe I did. I kind of remember. I'd have to go through some and see what I wrote. But I can tell you right now they're almost identical. And I have that from experience. They're almost identical to what you get in some of the Tibetan tummo practices. Okay? Hey, you're welcome. So, but practice it. That's the thing. Practice it. Okay? That's the real things. Practice it. Get attainment from it. Achieve it. That'll be the real things. And then once you've had experience, good experience, and you're comfortable within your own realm of experience, and pass it on to others. Okay? And support each other in your practice. As you focus on your throat, it's a vibrant red. It should be about the size of a marble. Okay? But brilliant and luminous and light. And you can even feel like the area of heat, like when you go near a light bulb and the light bulb's here, but you can feel the heat out here. Same thing here. You can feel the heat kind of broader out. But rest within it. At first you're always looking at it, but then rest within it. And then make your prayer. Say your prayer that tonight I will dream. And as I dream, I will be aware that I am dreaming. And I will be aware that I am dreaming, and I will control and direct my dreams. And as I control and direct my dreams, I will become aware of the nature of my own mind, the nature of reality. Something, whatever you're comfortable with as that last phrase. And you repeat that over and over and over again as you fall asleep. The other way is to have an image of a divine figure. Thoth is good. Hermes is good. Thoth Hermes. Sophia is very good. I encourage you to get a good image of Sophia. Possibly like have you seen the icon I sent you? No, okay. We'll find something, okay. Something like that. Again, she's always clothed in red, okay? Because that's the energy of life, okay? And you visualize her in front of you, and then moving over and coming down into your heart, your throat, and some say into your heart. I think it's best if you start and move it into the throat and then to the heart later, or go from the heart to the throat. But pick one, see how it goes, and then if it's not the best, move on to the other, or back and forth. But eventually you want to have it rest in your heart. Okay? We start with the throat because that connects, as we said, the body, speech, and mind. It connects them right there. There is a great deal of energy wrapped up in our words, and that's why we're using this in our prayer. Verbalize your prayers when you say them. Don't just say them in your head, but actually speak them. And then you'll notice that you either speak them with confidence or you don't. Tonight I will dream, and as I dream, I will become aware that I am dreaming. As I become aware that I am dreaming, I will direct my dreams. I will direct my dreams and become aware of the ultimate nature of my own reality, of my own being, of my own mind. Say it and mean it. Say it out loud and mean it. And then hold on to it and go to sleep. No, have fun then. So, as you do this, you pay attention to it. Now, what will happen is you may decide that you want to spice things up a bit, because being they call them monkey minds in the East, but in the alchemical drawings it's a rabbit. Like your little rabbit head's always bouncing around from one thing to another. Say, well, I want some excitement. Well, we all do. That's unfortunately the nature of our mind. So you can then later on do the same thing with different planetary symbols. And you can do one starting with Saturn and work your way down to the moon, like a week on each one. Or you can cycle through using the planetary symbol of the day. I mean, since this is just, training, basic training anyhow at this point, it doesn't matter which way you start. Eventually you get to the point where you're just doing the planetary symbol of the day. Now here you can practice working with the kind of bluish-black color that we use for space, or you can stay with the brilliant red. It doesn't really matter to me. I mean, I just point this out because you may find a different experience. You may resonate more with one than the other, because you may need more of the energy that red brings, or you may need more of the spaciousness that, because red is fire, of course. Fire is the energy of initiation. Okay? Write that one down. Fire is the energy of initiation. You may need more of it, but you may also be comfortable more with that spaciousness of the bluish black. It's really, you gotta, you're getting into big boy, big girl territory here. Where you gotta kind of sort of realize that you gotta make some decisions based on your experience and stick with that, rather than, having a cookie cutter pattern laid out for you, Keep careful attention to your dreams, because of course you will find that your dreams are most potent in and around the full moon. Okay. Anyone notice that? You keep dream jogs? Yeah? Yeah. Okay. So you take advantage of it, you use it. Now, that's lucid dreaming. See, the thing is, this stuff at some point isn't terribly complex. It just requires constant vigilance. Now, because your unfoldment now no longer has anything to do with what I tell you. Your unfoldment is completely in your own hands. Okay?
You're on your own.
Let's say you're on your own, but you're well on your way to being on your own. So your unfoldment's in your own hands. Okay? Now, those of you, I'm going to say at some point, those of you who haven't had the opportunity to, I know I've spoken with Brian about it on my one, I've mentioned it on one of my newsletters, is there's a practice for tuning yourself well with Hermes talk, initiation. It's kind of, I won't call it an initiation, but it's a practice, it's a 40-day practice, okay, dealing with talk. And if you get the opportunity at some point, it's good to do it. Brian can hold your hand through it next year. It's very good because it'll show you what happens in these kinds of practices. Traditional practices were done in retreat. We don't always have that advantage, but we can still do a retreat for 40, 50, 60, 90 days within our own daily life by simply getting up every day and doing it. Okay? And you'll find that it's often these practices like this are great because, you start out full of enthusiasm and things are going great, and then they just get, wretchedly boring at some point, and they're just horrible. Oh man, and then you reach certain points. Everyone seems to get them roughly at the same. Almost everyone seems to follow the same cycle. It's so funny, because we talk about it afterwards. and then, bam, you know? When you get it, you get it. You know, it's with you forever now, okay? And it's those kinds of practices where you stick with something over a period of time that really means you're serious about it. You know, it's the same thing over and over again every day. You know, why am I doing this to myself? Okay, I started it, I'll finish it. Well, that attitude sucks, doesn't it? Okay, let me try and get a little happy about this. Well, you know, all that's part of the reflection of the obstacles that you create within yourself to your own growth. So you persevere, and you can really, some of these things, you know, that you push beyond what we consider the normal limit. That's why we talk about the alchemical month. It's 40, 42 days, it's not 30. It's like certain thresholds. And it always happens, not always exactly at the end of the threshold, but near it. So when you're just about to give up, that's why you always hear in the stories, when you're just about to give up and you push, that's when it falls into place. I knew a fellow, he was Indian, he was great stories he would tell. And he was very, very psychic, very successful. People used to wait till he'd come back to India from visiting here to like arrange their marriages and stuff. And kind of tough too, because you really couldn't surprise him with anything, you know. But he'd say, you know, you just practice. When the apple's ready, it falls. You know, I knew a guy in a lodge down around the Allentown area, a esoteric lodge, used to go to on occasion. Very successful fellow. And he said, you know, I practiced for probably, I think he said, 10 years before he had a real psychic experience. Well, we would call one, but he just diligently did everything. I think he might have had more than that, because some of his experiences during the war were, you know, he should have been dead too many times, you know. But again, he said, you know, just stop right there. And boom. Oh, we're still alive. They've been not stopped right there, they wouldn't have been. So I think that kind of counted as a psychic experience. But what he meant is the kind that we often think of, is that kind of, you know, flashbang, something you can say, oh, well, it's a psychic experience. Fact is, you're having them all the time. Either that or just moldy bread reading. So.